I hope you all got a chance to at least briefly see the show before coming in here to hear Margo talk. Margo Newmark Rosenbaum, who I think most of you know, has worked alongside her husband Art for over 50 years. She's most well known for her photographic work, documenting the musicians during field recordings that she attended with Art over decades. But she also captured intimate photographs of painters, collectors, and children. And that's mostly what you see on view in the North Gallery where her photographs are. With the help of Neil, her son, these photographs have been compiled into a book called Drawing with Light. There's a copy of it back there, extra copies too. So, of course, when we were looking at what photographs to choose to show in this small space, it was very arduous. She's got 50 years of photographs. How do you select 12? But it was, even though it was very painful to not be able to include some, it was delightful to listen to the stories Margo had to tell about each photograph, where this was taken, or why she was interested in this light, or this composition, and the stories behind who these people are. So hopefully you'll get to see more of these photographs today. So even as Margo was documenting Art's endeavors and the artists that they were around, she continued to paint. Her painting studio practice kept going. In the gallery, the Lukasiewicz gallery, you'll see a painting from 1984, and you'll see a painting from June 2022. And CL marked that it's pretty awesome that your style has been consistent. You are who you are. So you studied painting under the legendary Bay Area figurative artists, Richard Diebenkorn and Elmer Bischoff, and got your BFA in painting from San Francisco Art Institute, and then Margo went on to get her MA in photography from the University of Iowa. And the paintings that you see in the North Gallery, they're mostly figurative. There's some animals, horses, and dogs, and cats, and there's even some dragons and a harpy or two. But I just have to say, it was a real pleasure and an honor for me to get to spend time with Art and Margo during the process of putting together this show. They're two amazing creative people. They have a house filled with art that kind of shows that they celebrate and build the artistic community around us. They appreciate other creative people and uplift other creative people in addition to being amazingly creative people themselves. So I'm excited to hear Margo speak, and I just want to let you know that after her talk, we'll have refreshments outside the Lukasiewicz gallery, and we ask that you wear your mask except for when you're eating food or drinking. Thank you, Margo, for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I'll start out by saying that when I go to the studio to paint, this is what I see, an empty canvas. This represents an empty canvas. And then I have to figure out what to do with it. And I start maybe putting something on with paint or with charcoal. And then I start having a dialogue with it, and it will start to grow. And I think that's what as a self-portrait done maybe 50 years ago, that I was kind of fascinated by cactus at the time, and I did that one. But this is a photograph, obviously, or maybe not so obvious, but it's with photography, I have a dialogue with the environment. And in this case, it was sort of a setup with a camera that was I put on a timer and took this picture. And this is an early painting, self-portrait. When I did a more representational kind of work than I do now, composition has always been important to me. And and compositionist, I think, in this painting. That's also fairly early. That's like 1979 and Cortona. It was we called it the Tower House. It was a house that was one of the people in the Cortona families, the Cortona program, were staying in. And I thought it was interesting. Now, with shooting with a camera, I also do compositional considerations, and I feel like I can get more abstract than with working with a camera than I do when I'm working with painting. Painting, I either tell something, or I have this sort of like, I have subject matter as well, I guess, and say, but this has subject matter. This was at a studio about an hour outside of Paris. And the man in the back is the artist, and they were setting up some of his work to have photographed for a show he was going to have in Paris. But he collected Japanese armor, and this was one piece of it. And that is Bob Beach, and maybe some of you knew him, looking at one of his own paintings or drawings, I'm not sure which, probably a drawing. And that is Alice Neal, who had a show here when Bill Paul was the director of the museum. Delightful woman. We met her in New York, and she was way up in her 80s. And that's James Baldwin, who we met in 1982 in Cortona. He happened to be there because a friend of his was having a show. And this is going back to 1971 or 70, I forget which, in Scotland. These were berry pickers. They were picking raspberries. And we went there to try to find some folk music. Now, in what I'm showing here, I do not have much in the way of musicians, but a lot of the photographs I've taken that have been shown around here and been published have been musicians and a lot of folk musicians. But I just happened, except for this guy, who was in South Georgia, named Cecil Barfield, who's a blues player. I don't have other musicians, at least folk musicians in these. Now this is a painting, and I think I'm sort of like a free associative painter. I start something, I don't have a plan, and in some cases I do, but in this case I didn't. And I just get started, and then I start like finding other things to do with it and put it there until it becomes something that I find, satisfactory to whatever it is I'm trying to say. And quite often I don't really quite know what it is. So it's a kind of psychological thing, I guess. Another one, though I think this one was a little bit of a stab at computers, but it's not that obviously so. There's an apple there, but and this one I had never shown out publicly before. I've only shown it to a few friends. It's an old one that I did. It must have been like, they were less than 36 years ago. It was a family situation where we had a niece who was at that time 16 months old, and she was out with her nanny, and she was kidnapped by a man with a gun. And she was not found for quite a few hours. It was 20 hours, I believe. But she was okay. I mean, she's now pregnant herself, and she's 36. Anyhow, I found this interesting, and I have never told them that I did this painting because I thought they might be offended and disturbed by it. So I'm sure they're publicly now because none of you will likely to ever see them. Tell them about it, and someday I might tell them about it, and they might not mind at all. This is another photograph that I think is very compositional and been abstracted, And I was taken then to Getty Museum in Brentwood. I'm not sure what it's called, but that's in that area in Los Angeles, West LA. And that is our cat, Silver, who I felt also compositionally kind of related in a way to that other Getty Museum picture. And there he is again, it becomes a compositional thing in this case, because the lighting hit the chair and everything in such a weird way. Now that's a view from this apartment in the Bronx, looking across this little kind of river thing, but to the other side toward New York City. And on the left is the New York City part. The right is all woods. And that really show quite well. But that's also, I would not say this was abstract, but this is fairly abstract. This was a photograph I took of art looking at a map when we were in Indiana. And I got all these clouds reflected on the windows. And it made an interesting composition. And there's a tree with various colors behind it, and it had leaves. Those are leaves that are on the tree, they're not birds. And again, it becomes an abstraction. And it's funny because I feel much freer to do abstraction with the camera than I do with painting. And there's another one that's a little airplane window. And there's a painting again where I sort of I guess, telling a story, though I don't know what the story is. Except that there's a man who is blue and a woman who's pink, and the orange and striped yellow cat. Not this one, but when we were at the artist's studio that had the Japanese armor from an hour out of Paris, his, I guess, second wife, who was ill. She was in her 80s and she was bedridden. But she had joined the people in the living room. She'd been brought in there. And she was lying there. And at one point, when they started to take photographs of the artist's paintings, because everybody's seen the paintings, I came downstairs, partly because they had an awful lot of cats, and I really smelled of cat pee up in the studio. And just to be more comfortable, I came down and she was sleeping on this bed. And I looked at her at one point, and there was like this image that sort of came out of her head. I mean, it came up, sort of like out of her head, that was kind of, not opaque, but kind of foggy, or kind of, I just never quite found the right word for it. But at any rate, it looked like her. It looked like her, and she had these curlers, and these big curlers in her hair, and it had those on them too. And I went up, and then it came down again, and then it went up and disappeared. I thought, that was really odd. And I was sitting there with the camera, but I wouldn't have felt comfortable taking a picture of a person that was in the state that she was in. So of course, I probably wouldn't have picked the camera, probably wouldn't have shown it anyhow, but at any rate, I didn't do it. And not too long afterwards, her husband came down and said, Ellie Mort is dead. So I don't know what it was about. I've never had anything like that happen before, nor since then. And I assume that I saw her maybe her spirit leave or whatever. And that's a watercolor that I did from life. It's Anna Isaac, or someone thought of it as a self-portrait, but it isn't. But it is our cat, even though he's white in this case and not gray or silver color. And the paint was kind of interesting. It was paint that was made out of minerals, watercolor paint. Pigment that was made out of minerals, and I was experimenting with it. Art has been working on, has finished a portrait of Michael Stein, who's going to be in a show that he's having in New York. And I was taking some pictures at the time he was working with Michael Stipe. And there's a picture of his, he was just starting the painting of Michael Stipe and art studio. And then that's pretty much all the slides. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Yes?
What was it like meeting Elizabeth Cotton? Do you have any stories to tell about when you met her or whatever? I have her live album, and you can get a good idea of her personality from that. Elizabeth Cotton?
Elizabeth Cotton. She's great. She stayed with us for about 2 or 3 nights.
Oh, okay.
In Iowa City. This is sort of embarrassing, but I was just kind of afraid to have her come. I'd never met her before. And she was 82 years old. And I thought, oh no, she's just too old. I mean, I was quite a bit younger than I am now, because I'm now 80. But anyhow, so I was kind of concerned, well, what if she gets sick? What if she has this problem or that problem? And so forth. But she was just delightful and very, very together, very capable of doing her own thing. And so that was a good experience. Any other questions? I have 10 more minutes.
Margo, I have a question. What has it been like to go from film photography to digital? What do you miss about film or not, and what do you appreciate about a modern camera?
I like the quality that film has and it prints out, can print out. And however, I very much am glad not to have the fumes that tended to give me a headache. And I also very much enjoy the fact that I can see the picture that I'm going to take of the digital photography as I go along, as opposed to have to wait till I develop some film, maybe 2 weeks later, or it could be an hour later, or 5 minutes later. But at any rate, I have to wait before I can see what image I come out with. And that's about it. I like the digital photography fine. It doesn't bother me. So I do think that I like black and white photography a lot. I didn't really have much of that I showed here. But film does tend to lend itself, and for me anyhow, much more toward black and white photography. I didn't really like color photography with film. So I don't know, it's about all. Anything else anyone has? No, I have 6 minutes. I can't think of much else. One thing is I don't like to talk about painting that much, or even photography. I sort of like them to try to talk for themselves visually, because I am much more of a visual person than I am a verbal person. And consequently, I like the work to talk. You know, it's best, I'll communicate, I should say. And anyhow, I hope it does, you know. So.
Margo, tell us how you are integrated so beautifully with musician pictures that you have taken in Appalachian, that sort of thing. You just feel how embraced you were by that community and how integral you were.
The question is
About musicians.
yeah, well, Art and I just did that for a really long time, and I welcomed this particular opportunity to get away from that and showing it, because of those things have been shown so much. And yes, I mean, I just got kind of oversaw them, let's say that. And it was good to try to show them other aspects of what I have been doing. But yes, I mean, I do like a lot of the photographs I did take that Appalachian and other folk situations in other parts of the country or world. Any others? Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your book, Drawing with Light. It's really an epic piece of work. It spans, what, 40 years, 50 years?
Wow. 40, 50, yes.
Yes. And could you talk a little bit about how you put it together?
Well, Neil helped me a lot because he's good with the technical aspects of helping clean up some images of some particular ones I'd done in the film. Some were really pretty dirty and needed to be cleaned up. And we did it during the pandemic. Of course, we're still in the pandemic. It didn't quit the pandemic, but we did it like I was here and Neil was where he lives in Missouri. And we did it through having both our screens and computers open. And we could talk about it and work around that way. And I pretty much picked what was going to go into it and had a sense of sequencing the work. I just had a feeling about which photograph should follow which photograph. So we have some back there if anyone wants to look through them or buy them. So anyhow, anything else?
Well, I just wanted to say that it's a remarkable book because the photographs aren't arranged chronologically. Rather, they're arranged according to the affinities they have for each other. You see, and that's very unusual for photo books. But it just makes the whole thing a revelation. So you'll see an Appalachian photograph, and on the next page, one from India. And so I just wanted to kind of mention that because I think that's the way you think. Can you talk a little bit more about like you said, you see composition everywhere, but your studies of people are so deep that not that you should have to talk about that, but it seems you have your camera with you all the time. What makes you pick it up and shoot a stranger, say in the subway?
Carefully. I don't want to be caught doing it. I've only once had someone, ask me to not take a picture of him. And in fact, the matter was I was supposed to take a picture of someone beyond him. I don't know. It was something to do in a subway. And I had a camera with me, and I found it interesting, and I got into it. It just became kind of a challenge. And, it was interesting. I saw all these people looking at their telephones and playing games or whatever they were doing. And I don't know, they got interesting expressions or off, strange kind of moments in their lives because they're not thinking about it. They're not expecting to be photographed. Most people, I don't think, even care anymore. I mean, it's so invasive. Any else? Yeah.
Your paintings are so vibrant with such rich colors, and your photography is almost all black and white. Can you say something about that?
That's good. Good question.
Yeah. Let's see. What can I say about that? I mean, I like black and white photography. I just tend to prefer it because I think it's so much more dramatic. But I don't know what I paint. This is so weird. I mean, I do draw in black and white quite a bit, but when I'm painting with color, I can't seem to resolve a painting until I get into a lot of bright color. Sometimes I actually intentionally Start out meaning to try to keep it less vivid, but I just can't get it to be ready to be considered finished until I get it vivid. It's a funny thing. So any other questions, or shall we call it a?
I just want to congratulate your cat on being such a wonderful model.
I'm sure he's thankful.
Well, thank you for doing this.